This weekend we see a famous return of several things to Mount Panorama. A blue car, an XD, a Ford driven by a Johnson. We see Steve Johnson driving his Touring Car Masters car at Bathurst for the first time. Steve, we're in for an exciting weekend.
We are, Crush. It's a very, I think it's going to be a very emotional return there, even with the amount of Bathurst we have done, but to bring a blue XD Falcon back to Bathurst where, in 1980 it all started with the Rock, and then 1981 to come back and win it with a car predominantly funded by Ford and the fans, was a great reward. So to bring this car out so many years later now in Touring Car Masters, it's had a massive, following now from a lot of people around the country, a lot of fans. A lot of people have come up to us. Even the first couple of meetings, or only 2 meetings that it's done, has been phenomenal. So the crowd engagement and I think the memories that this sort of car brings back to them is what really excites them about Touring Car Masters.
We'll talk about Bathurst, we'll talk about the Rock, we'll talk about those things a little bit later. What I want to do is talk about this car, and obviously it's basically a brand new race car as such, even though it's a 1980 Falcon. Talk about how this car came about, where it came from, and the process to get it to a position that we see it sitting in pristine condition today.
Well, it was, we were lucky enough to commandeer Mustang Sally after John had finished with it and moved on to the Tirana, and our good friend Tony and Barb Warren, who owned the car at the time, allowed us to use it. So with great success, as it did with JB, in the hands of JB. Probably midway through 2018, we decided that we'd love to build an XD Falcon for Touring Car Masters, and went on the approval from TCM to get the approval to run a car that's a 1980 build car, and because previous to that it was previous to 1980. So once we got the approval to do that, we then tried to commandeer a car, and luckily...
I guess that's not an easy process.
It's not, no. We probably looked at 20 cars, and I reckon when you look at the cars, it probably couldn't call them cars. You'd probably call them 60% of cars, because the other 40% was rust, and it was very, very hard. You just can't make a race car with a car that fundamentally is not good from the start. So we got contacted by a fan, Ben, who's been a long-term fan of the Johnsons and Dick Johnson Racing. And he said, hey, I hear you're looking for a car to build for Touring Car Masters, and I've got an XD Falcon that I think you guys would be interested in. So, straight away, I wasn't available, but Dad and Dad's best mate, Goodo, went for a drive down to Curry, it was, down not far from Newcastle. Saw Ben, saw the car. It was actually purple, I think, in colour, so it was sort of blue.
Had a sunroof, didn't it?
It had a sunroof. It had a little pop-up sunroof. But it was in really good condition. It had no rust that we could see, or that Dad could see. It still had the 351 engine in it. It still had all the stuff in it, which we didn't need. And Ben was so nice to wanting to donate the car to us that we basically said, we don't need all this other stuff. You need to take these bits out and sell them. So we really only need the rolling car with the dashboard, because it's still got the standard dash in it, even though there's bits cut out for the roll cage. And you can sell what you can. Obviously we need the headlights and all that sort of stuff. The rear tail lights, you literally just can't get. They're like impossible. So they took all the gear out. Dad loaded on the trailer. He and Goodo drove back home, and the process started from there.
So you get it back to the Gold Coast. Where do you start with something like that? So you got the sheet, you go, okay, you've obviously got to get a design done. I hope Seppi helped you with that. And then so there's processes. So give us an idea about the other elements it takes before you actually start to put this thing together.
Yeah, well, Paul from Pace Innovations was very keen to get into the process of designing a TCM car. He's never done one before. He's the head designer of. He designed the Car of the Future chassis. He designed the Mark car chassis. So he was very keen to do something totally outside of what he's normally comfortable with, and has done a great job. So he went about reading the rules, what we can do, what we can't do. And you got to remember, these sort of guys, they're so clever, and they think outside the box so much that there was a lot of things that he says, we're going to do this, this, and this. And Dad and I had to say, well, just pull the horse up a bit there. We can't do that. So I didn't want to make this car so technically advanced that it doesn't really resemble a TCM car. But as you see it now, even with all the cool stuff that it's got in it, it's still got its standard wheel arches. It hasn't been tubbed or anything like that, like a lot of the, you see those sports sedans and drag cars, and even some Touring Car Masters cars have. It's still got all the original shock towers and all that sort of stuff in it. It's got some very, very cool stuff under the bonnet and under the chassis as well. So once we got that sorted, my uncle Dave, who's been a long-term part of
the legendary dyno
of Dick Johnson Racing, my cousin, so his son Robbie, went to town on the car and just really pulled it apart to a bare shell. Once they got it back to the bare shell, Dad and I actually loaded the shell back up onto the trailer. It just literally bare shell with the bonnet and the doors and the boot lid, and that was it. And we drove back down to Sydney, and we dropped the car off at a chassis acid dipping place in Sydney. And then once that was finished, it was then transported to, back in the time, I think it was 2018, it got transported back out to Eastern Creek it was actually the pre-test for V8 supercars. So the shell got dropped there, and then all of a sudden you probably would have seen it, there was a million photos of a bare shell next to the
It was amazing.
The DJR
an interest
transport.
in this thing that didn't resemble anything except an old XD sitting out the front of your truck. It was incredible, the interest.
Yeah, and that's where it all started. So from there, the XD come home in one of the supercar transporters back to Queensland, straight to Pace Innovations for Paul and the team to start doing their work on cutting the bits out, putting the roll cage in it, putting all the bits in it that they need, and it took quite a bit of time for that to happen. 12 months really for a build, but probably 2 years if you include the design as well.
Yeah. So in the meantime, you win the championship in Mustang Sally, clinch it at Newcastle. That's right, isn't it?
Yep.
And then you've got to leave that and go, okay, we're gonna race this in 2020. You do your first test day at Lakeside, which in itself, the purists understand the importance of that place to your family. I mean, it was the place that your dad won the Touring Car Championship in '81 and was the god there for the fans that used to pack it 10 deep in the good old days. What was there a conscious decision to debut the car there in that test day, which I think you did in consultation with DJR at a ride day and a few other things, rather than do it at Queensland Raceway or Warwick or somewhere else?
Yeah, that was something that myself, Dad, and Ryan Story, who Ryan's had a massive part of this whole car as well, from the word go. The three of us, Lakeside for us was the only place to debut the car to everyone. And I think people don't realise just how hard that is, because Lakeside now is very densely populated with housing estates and things. It's very noise sensitive out there. Yes, they still have some classes and some events out there, but they're generally events with cars that are quite quiet. To run one of these sort of cars out there is very hard, and we had to do a lot of modifications just in the sound to be able to drive the car around there. But to be able to do that, John Tetley and the whole team there who run Lakeside was great, and they helped us out a lot to do that. So for us to do the launch there of this car, when it was Dad's home track, it was the track that he first would cut the fence up the back, skip school and go and watch practice sessions. He'd took his parents, my grandparents' road car up there and stuck a number on the side of the FJ Holden and raced it and won his first race there. And then didn't win a race for another 3 years, but won his first race.
He doesn't talk about that gap.
He doesn't talk about that one. And then, as you would probably remember, 1981, after the Rock, which I'm sure we'll talk about is the place where he sealed the championship with Brock in the new car, and then went on to win Bathurst after that. So it's a very special place to us, and a place that I debuted as a kid racing cars in my Datsun 1600 Sport sedan. And Dad,
What a car that was.
that was a great little car. It taught me a lot about racing, no horsepower, very good handling car, and really set me up for, my career out of go-karting. But Dad, to still say to this day, and myself too, I agree with him that it's probably one of the best tracks in the country. But, obviously on par with Bathurst, very short track, but, one of the only tracks, or the only track apart from Bathurst back in that time, that was an average speed of over 100 mile an hour lap time, over 160 kilometres an hour. So very exciting track. Probably wouldn't pass safety standards these days.
No, I'm backing that out.
But still a fantastic bit of bitumen to race on.
See cars running 3 wide through the kinks, pretty exciting stuff.
Absolutely.
For sure. So you had a couple of teething problems on that day, as you'd expect with a brand new car. You had Uncle Dino there overseeing some process and some of the boys. So you get it all together and you go to Adelaide. What was to unfold last year, we sort of didn't really have a sniff off at that point. And you go to Adelaide and you debut it. So you run at Lakeside, which is a daunting place in itself. But I guess unveiling this baby for the first time and be able to have to turn a wheel in anger at a place like Adelaide, you must have had a few butterflies when you went out for the first time.
Yeah, it's for both days, to be fair, because we literally loaded the car up into the truck to go to the Lakeside test at 2 a.m. that morning. It still wasn't fully finished. There was still a lot of stuff inside that hadn't been done. We sold quite a lot of rides to do in the car that day. I think there was something like 60 odd rides to do. So it was a lot of pressure on us to make sure the car would run and to make sure we could get through all the rides for all the fans that came out, and the turnout. You were there on the day. The turnout was just incredible.
Incredible, it was.
Once we got through that day, it was a big relief, but there was still a lot of work to be done before Adelaide. Same again, we loaded it into the truck. I think it was 1 a.m. In the morning of before the event, and then the truck pretty much left then. The truck was meant to leave 10 o'clock, but didn't happen that way. We had a few little issues. But driving out of Adelaide for the first time was very special, because obviously I'm heading out into the track with everybody else from Touring Car Masters. That was it. That was the race meeting. And second of all, still a very untested, unproven, low mileage, brand new car that's totally different to what we used to race. I was under no illusion that it was going to be difficult, and I was very realistic in saying that the car would not roll out anywhere near what its potential was capable of, and that proved me right on both accounts.
So we then go into a COVID period. So we're basically locked down. Grand Prix doesn't happen, and then basically she's zero from then on. Supercars did an amazing job, especially the Victorian teams and the way they went about to get their races done. But it was limited. It was about those guys getting it done for TV deals and making sure that everyone had some money and they could all survive and go racing again. On the side, you had Jet, who is forging a career of his own. You had the Hyundai. I think he did a couple of races last year when they had a chance to do that.
He did more races than I did.
Did more races than you did. So just let's talk about Jet for a second. And he's running a car with a 17 on the side, a Hyundai in the same colour blue. It's pretty cool stuff. Does that give you, given the COVID situation, a chance, because you're in Queensland, where it was a bit more lenient in what we could do up here, a chance for you to spend that time, more quality time with Jet, and for him to be able to learn from you direct at those race meetings?
Yeah, although 2020 was certainly very hard for many, and including myself financially, because when I don't race, it's not just the racing, it's all the driver training and all the advanced driver training that I do for companies like Audi and Porsche. That is where I make my living, and that all stopped, the whole lot. So it was very hard financially, but I'm not worried in a way, because instead of retiring at 75, I'm just going to retire at 90 now. So that doesn't make any difference. But The time that I was able to spend with my family, Jet and my daughter Lacey and Bree, I wouldn't say as much mum and dad, because it was sort of that time that you sort of couldn't go and hang with your parents, and I didn't want to because of the worry of dad being mid-70s now and mum sort of early 70s. They were very susceptible to COVID at that age. So we spoke a lot on the phone, but we didn't see each other a lot. So to spend that time with our family was just fantastic, and for Jet to be able to do those race meetings up at Morgan Park and his Hyundai, and spend the time together was something that I think made me realise that I probably need to change my thought process on what I do within my career and my life, because I'm missing out on too much with them. Because if you talk about time away and work, in 2019 I was away about 40 weeks in the year, and that doesn't leave much for your family to do, or to spend time with. So that's made me reassess a fair bit of stuff and try to, start my own little business in Queensland and do some more work in Queensland so that I'm here for them. But the racing that we did last year with him was great fun, and we plan to do a lot more of that, this year and obviously the future years to come in his Hyundai, as well as stepping up into something like a TA2, and we'll see where we go from there, whether he gets to supercars or not.
And I guess I know that Dad Dick's massive fan of Jet, and he loves keeping an interest in everything he does. But then when we talk about Bathurst and the things where people were disrupted, I think Dad missed his first race in early 70s. It was something crazy since he hadn't been there, and had to watch his team compete there without him sort of being around to be able to do that. See, the battles that everybody faced through that year, then you've still got to keep your eye on the ball and say, okay, we need to keep the show alive. And a lot of teams at all levels have survived because of some terrific commitment from their sponsors. And we look at the sponsors on this car, you've got some familiar ones that are crossed with DJR, Shell V-Power, Pertec, Herod Performance. There's some good crossover partners, but you've got Full Throttle, which has been a great supporter of yours. Kubota, Shannon. There's some good brands on this car, and they've managed to stick with you, which allowed you to go to Tasmania last month. Yeah,
and we're not a family that has got an abundance of money that we can just go racing. We rely on these guys. All of these guys on my car, Full Throttle, have been just amazing. To come on board in 2020 and then have 2020 the way it turned out was just terrible. They've opened up a brand new business, Full Throttle Custom Garage, which is on this car, but they've got many other businesses as well that pretty much stopped through COVID as well. So to have those sort of guys still really keen to not only support me, but they support Jet as well. They want to be with Jet Johnson for the long haul, which is great for me, because this my time's limiting now. I'm getting older, but Jet's not. Well, he's getting older, but he's coming into his career. So, if we can then start to move these sponsors over and he starts to go well and feed them towards him, that might give us a really good chance to get him where he wants to go. But all these guys, and if you look at this car and you sort of put the 1980/81 XD beside this in photos, as much as we possibly can, and as you know, sponsorship's very hard, very corporate sponsors, and the way that their logos are portrayed is very, very important to them. It's their IP. But things like 3.3s, they wanted to be on the front bumper bar on this car in that font, because that's exactly how the sponsor was back. Prudential, I think it was, on the front bumper bar of the 1980/81 XD.
And 3.3's been another great sponsor of great Australian company, being a great supporter of DJR.
Same again, they're a company that's growing as well. They're expanding this year. They've had their ups and downs through COVID. They've had their ups and downs. You got to think that every time there's a flood in the country or a drought, these guys get affected, because they're farmers who are growing the pickles and growing all these things. They don't get this. The last time they had a flood down in Sydney at the Hawkesbury, their whole crop went, which meant that they couldn't make their pickles. You just don't realise the knock-on effect that those sort of things have. and for these guys to still be on board, not only with us but on board with Dick Johnson Racing too, and the Shell V-Power team is incredible. So
it's almost that resilience that is bred in motorsport, even though they're not a motorsport company. It sort of ties in, right? The resilience that's required. So we get through COVID and we get to go racing. You get to go to Tasmania a couple weeks ago. So you roll it out at Symonds Plains, which again is, not the least daunting place in the world. There's plenty of Armco there, and a couple of big braking spots, fast track, and you've got to pull it up in a hurry, and funnily enough, at a point where you've got to pull it up in a hurry, you had a failure you probably want to forget about, and you lose the front right-hand wheel off the car, which is captured in a great sequence of photos by young Ben Rowland, who,
Pace Images, I think it was.
Pace Images, who did a great job, and we actually ran him on Speed Cafe and to give him a bit of a chance to get into the main game. And funnily enough, he's been picked up by a supercars team on the back of that. So you've done someone a favour by losing the wheel.
Thanks.
You could send him an invoice. What's it like breaking into that point, turning the corner, and realising that the right-hand front wheel is 25 feet above your roof?
Well, funnily enough, it's a bit weird, but going into or coming out of that corner when that happened, initially when it happened, I wondered straight away what happened, and then a split second after that, I remembered that when Dad hit the rock in 1980, coming out of the cutting, it was the front right wheel that he hit it with, and I'm thinking, somebody throw a rock here? What's going on? So it was just unfortunate. It was just an unfortunate, engineering issue with the wheel. No one's fault. Once I pulled it up, and realised what had happened and saw the wheel. Well, I actually didn't see where the wheel went. I know it went high, and I've seen Ben's photo since, but I don't recall it hitting the fence and coming off the fence and over the car. Thank God it didn't land on the roof of the car or anybody else. But I do remember it coming down the track and actually hitting the other side of the car before I pulled up. So I'd known there's an issue there. But once I got out and realised what happened, it's just one of those things. We've gone through it, we've looked at it, we've analysed the wheel, we've analysed the broken parts, and it was literally just an engineering issue.
It's actually pretty amazing to see that centre of that wheel still on the hub and the wheel gone. It's like you could tell what had happened straight away. There was no question about it.
And we looked at the wheel, and it's hit the fence pretty hard, and it's hit the ground pretty hard, and then it's hit the car pretty hard. And you look at the wheel, and it's got the slightest little dent in it. So they're a damn strong wheel. It's just ironic that it just, I think there was an issue that obviously failed somehow, whether it was heat related or not. And it was only one spoke that failed, but then obviously once one had an issue, it's sort of like a bit of a domino effect, and it knocked everything else out. So we were actually quite lucky with the damage, that it didn't do that much. It ground the bottom pin down for the steering arm, which we only really had 20 minutes to fix it. By the time we got back, I had to spend a whole race out there on the track in the, in the sand trap sort of breakdown area before we could get the car back. And then by the time we got back, there was a very short time that we needed to get it fixed. I had to change all the wheels off those rims and put them on other rims that we hadn't used, that were brand new. That was the only way I could figure that we could do it safely.
Yep.
And got out there and finished third in the last race. So it was a testament to, Nick, my cousin Robbie, to get the car back out there. And, it was a reasonably good debut for the car, apart from obviously that one issue.
So you get it back, you clean it up, and now we go to Bathurst. So let's turn our focus towards that and what that place means to your family. 1980, the legendary incident with the rock, your dad hits the rock. There's a public outcry supported by Ford, raise enough money, rebuild the car, comes out, wins the 81 championship at Lakeside, which we discussed, goes back and wins Bathurst in a shortened race with John French. You go there this weekend with that history in the can, you knowing that you're going back with a car and colours that's synonymous with your family heritage at that place. And you're no slouch at that place. You had 21 1,000 starts there. You finished third there, I think, 2007 with Will in the wet.
Yep.
it was a memorable day. And then probably even more memorable than that was your 98, 99 starts with your dad, Johnson & Johnson, on the side of the car. How you didn't do a deal there, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know.
There's a million things we could say. And then you finished fourth. You know, you just failed to finish on the podium with Dad and his last race there, which was quite remarkable.
Surprisingly, we were lucky to finish fourth. I mean, he came back after the race and the thing literally had no brake pads left. The material was gone. It was down to metal, and I still don't know how he was able to get it to fourth with no brakes. Maybe that was the key. Maybe he needed no brakes for his career and it would have been faster.
How do you come? So let's talk about that 80. I think you're at home in your race car bed or something in front of the TV. You're 6 years old or something.
Yeah, I was 6 years old. It was sort of back in the day that houses had sunken lounge rooms and things, and I was in the sunken lounge room, and I'd always make a race car out of all the cushions and pillows that I'd sit in with a little gap for the windscreen, looking straight at the TV. Sitting in that little car, pretty much would sit in it all day for Bathurst, and because my nan would look after us, she would bring us drinks and food and stuff, and I'd sit in this little car.
Like your own pit stop, Nan.
Like my own pit stop, yep, absolutely. So to see that happen, it was weird, and I actually remember it because I remember he was quite away in the lead. Ironically, it happened on lap 17, and the camera wasn't on him at the time. The camera was on a few other breakdowns and some other action in the race, and then all of a sudden, the tow truck, the flatbed with a broken down car on it, come around the corner, and lo and behold, in the middle of the road's Dad's car, and Dad's, sitting in there about to get out. So it didn't look like it had that much damage on it, but most of the damage, even though he hit the rock, I think with the right front wheel, he went up on the wall, and then pretty much the whole left side of the car was gone. And I remember, because my little race car bed that I'd made out of the cushions would come apart pretty easily, so I punched the roof off, and I punched the sides out, and I kicked the bonnet out, and probably stormed off in a little Steve Johnson bad mood, I reckon, for the rest of the day. And
what about 12 months later?
12 months later was, I don't think I really, understood, not so much the Johnson name, because that's sort of where the rock, and then the next year was sort of where it really kicked on from there for Dad. But the support, I didn't understand the sort of support, that they ended up getting at the time, because I saw Dad on the TV, they were interviewing him, and he said, I do remember him saying that, we've put everything into this, we've mortgaged the house, so this is us, we're done, we've given it our best shot, and everything that I've worked for is in that car, and that car's now going to the scrap heap. And then obviously people started ringing in, Channel 7, and Mike Raymond was talking about it, but I sort of didn't comprehend it all at the time. Edsel Ford then rang up and said that they'd match dollar for dollar what they'd raise. I think Edsel probably thought they were going to raise $5,000.
Yeah, I think Edsel might get caught out there.
They ended up raising $75,000, which was just phenomenal, and basically it changed their life. It changed, that was the car that the fans had helped build for DJR for that championship tilt in 1981, and then winning Bathurst. I mean, you're right. It's a legendary thing. It's something that you almost couldn't script. I mean, you do script it because that's what you want it to happen, but normally it doesn't happen that way.
So this weekend, Mum and Dad will be there. They've still got the supercar team to run.
Yep.
Now back totally under their, the Dick Johnson Racing name. There'll be as much interest in this rig here and you running around in it than there will be in the main pit lane. Yeah. How do you think you'll feel when you roll it out there for the first time?
Crush, to be honest, I think I'm going to be pretty nervous. It's a lot of people have said, there's big shoes to fill with Dad, and I understand that, but I still understand that, you know, I'm not him, I'm me. So I've always tried to keep that similarity between us, that yes, we're family, but what he's done, and, you know, I'll do the best with what I've done. And statistics wise, yeah, I probably haven't lived up to what he's done, but especially in supercars, but obviously TCM's a bit different. But to be able to represent where he started and what really got his career going is something special. And not only that, you know, we've had Nick, who helped build the car initially, who's done a lot of work in V8 supercars before, but also to have, you know, Dad, have my uncle Dino, my cousin Robbie, basically the four of us plus Nick build this car. That's to me is what something special is, and you know, there's a lot of people you go back through to the, you know, the Facebook and little things that we were putting up on the build and updates and things like that. It was incredible when you would see Dad and Dino there. Nick had started the car up for the first time. I recorded it. Dad and Dino were there. Dad's playing with a carby. Dino's doing something else, and just the comments and what people were saying brought back a lot of memories for them, which probably made it quite emotional for all of us. You know, Dad doesn't understand all the social media stuff. He's very old school, as you know, but when he does read that sort of stuff, I think he's very humbled by the support that he's got, and I think that's a testament to not only what he's done in his career, but what he's done as a person through the hard times and then through the good times. He's never changed as a person.
One of the people that might be missing this weekend, which haven't got a firm grip on it yet, is your mate Bowie. Now, John Bowe won two of your dad's three Bathursts with him, Australian Touring Car Champion. In Tasmania, wins his 100th race in Touring Car Masters, which is an incredible performance to be able to do that in one category, let alone the amount of wins he's had. And recently made public that he's got his battle with prostate cancer. When you heard that, and you are now in a battle with him in TCM, have been for several years, and you know, I know you've got a fantastic relationship. How did that affect you and Dad and the family because of the relationship you've got with him?
It was a massive shock to us because it's hard. You know, it was hard because he's been such an integral part of the family for so many years, whether it be racing, you know, probably more importantly, friendship to the family, but also big mentor for myself. As a kid growing up, he was, you know, I always had Dad to talk to, but, you know, sometimes you find it easy to talk to someone else apart from your dad.
For sure.
You know? And I was lucky enough because I had Dad who won 5 touring car championships. He had his style. You know, John, same again, touring car champion. He's got his style, and they're totally different styles. And for whatever reason, I really suited and liked John's style over Dad's style.
Yep.
That was just a personal thing. I loved how John, you remember him, he was always very close to the wheel, up on the wheel. Dad was very laid back, sort of like Brocky with the hand up on the windowsill. But I was always liked my seating position, you know, same again, a bit more upright and nice and close to the wheel, sort of like I felt like I'm sort of up on driving the car, and which caused a few issues when we drove in 98 and 99 with the seat position. So we had to compromise. But
I bet it was you compromised.
Yeah, my compromise was I'll have it the way Dad has it,
Yeah.
pretty much. But when he came out with that, you know, we had a great time in Tasmania. He'd won his 100th race, which is just phenomenal. You know, not long after that, you know, I don't normally show a lot of emotion publicly, but I put up a post which got a lot of people commenting on, and even John rang me and texted me that night and said thank you so much. But it was just a post that I put up because it's something simple that I felt I needed to do because of what he's done for us in the past, God, since the late 80s, you know what I mean? And he and Dad spoke on the phone for a long time, probably the night after it was announced. Dad went through the same thing. Dad's had the same thing, same prostate cancer, so I guess there was a lot of similarities there that they could talk about. But still hard to talk about, you know. I mean, he's sort of my hero, you know.
I guess the great thing is he's got it early. He's been a poster child. He got tested. He's been almost a student of what you should do.
Yep.
You know, he looks after himself.
Yep.
Nowadays, looks after himself.
Yeah.
You know, he's fit. He's still, you know, as fit as any, you know, 30-year-old out there probably in regards to how he looks after himself in regards to going racing, because he wants to keep racing. That's his passion. So, you know, the story is that, you know, he will fight this, he will win it, and then, you know, we'll see him back in a race car sooner rather than later.
Yeah. You know, if there's someone that will be able to get over something like that, you know, I know we all say it, but JB's it. You know, he lives for racing. He lives for going to the track. He lives for being around the people that he loves being around in motorsport. That's his life, you know, and, you know, he has suffered from depression, still does, in times where, you know, the worst time for him is when the season's finished. He hates it. He doesn't like Christmas. He doesn't like New Year's, because he can't go racing. But
again, he's spoken publicly about it and helped a lot of people as a result of that. This weekend, whether he's at the track or at home watching on TV, I'm sure he'll be there with you in spirit, as will every Ford fan in the country. The majority of race fans probably, whether they're, you know, they bleed blue or they bleed red, are just going to be thrilled to see this car back at Mount Panorama. The way you've presented it is a credit to you and the family. And, mate, we wish you all the best. Congratulations.
Thanks, mate. We're eagerly waiting that first practice session, and, you know, can't wait to get it down there and, you know, just to show it off to all the fans, because it is a car for the family, but it's a car for them as well.
As Sir Jack Brabham would say, mate, get after him.
Will do. Thanks.